Welcome to this video about textual evidence. Textual evidence deals with facts in writing and the strategies used to figure out whether or not the information is factual. Textual evidence comes into play when an author presents a position or thesis and uses evidence to support the claims. That evidence can come in a number of different forms. We'll explain textual evidence and the best way to analyze it. So, let's start here. What is textual evidence? Textual evidence uses information from an originating source or other text to support an argument. Think of textual evidence as the driving force behind debates. Debates take a position and then use facts as supporting evidence. You can take any debate position you want, but without facts to back up your argument, you can't prove your point. Here's an important issue. Evidence is not the same thing as a claim. Evidence is a single fact or set of facts. Barack Obama was the 44th president of the United States, is a fact. A claim is a statement that can be in dispute and requires further evidence. Aliens are buried at Area 51 in Nevada is a claim that can't be verified. Textual evidence only uses facts to make its point. So what should you look for when evaluating textual evidence? Think PDF. No, not the file format used in presentations. You want to make sure the information is precise, descriptive, and factual. That's easy to remember. Here are some clues to look for when analyzing textual evidence. Look for data that also includes the source information. Data are the strongest available pieces of evidence because statistics use analysis to reach strong, accurate conclusions. Here's an example of statistics. Which one of the examples is factual? 1. Americans with a college degree earn more money than Americans who have only earned a high school diploma, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. 2. About 327 million people live in the United States, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. 3. Nearly half of American households own dogs, according to a national survey. The answer? Those are all factual statements. You can go to the source and examine the data yourself. That's why statistics are such a powerful tool in textual evidence. The next form of evidence isn't as powerful as statistics, but it's often used to examine textual evidence. Experts give testimony in a number of areas. Testimony doesn't just mean in the legal sense, like when someone takes a stand in a court case. Testimony also means providing a set of facts based on expertise. An experienced and trained car mechanic can provide testimony on the workings of a car engine. A doctor with years of specialized training can testify about treatment options for patients. A pilot with thousands of hours of flight time can testify about the control panel on a jumbo jet. They all have expertise backed by verifiable, factual information. Authors use testimonial information to make their argument in an attempt to sway their audience. Statistics and expert testimony are the most reliable ways to analyze textual evidence, but there are two other methods as well. Anecdotal evidence can be tricky since anecdotes are personal observations that may or may not be factual. You can embellish anecdotes for literary effect. For example, you can tell an anecdote about the end of your day and it goes like this. After a long day, I'd come home with a headache. My body hurt. I was so tired that I didn't want to eat. I don't know if this makes any sense, but I was so tired I couldn't sleep. Maybe that's because I had so much on my mind. From there, the author might ask, have you ever been unhappy at work? The author would list the medical symptoms that correlate with unhappiness at work and then provide statistics on the number of Americans unhappy at their job. The anecdote on its own isn't really sufficient to persuade the audience, but anecdotes can serve a valuable literary purpose by keeping the audience engaged and leading them to the facts. An analogy compares two different things. My house is as hot as the sun is an example of an analogy. But in textual evidence, analogies prove useful when there's little available research on a specific topic. Cutting-edge topics have little data because researchers are in the beginning stages of gathering information. Here are two examples of analogical evidence. Based on how the audience uses mobile phones, we believe this is the right screen size for tablet computers. I saw a boring film that has a similar plot to this movie, so therefore the movie must be boring. In analogical evidence, the author tries to show a parallel, but you can see the problems, especially in the movie analogy. Just because one film is boring doesn't mean a similar movie will also be. That's why analogical evidence is the weakest form of evidence. So that's our look at textual evidence, the process of finding facts to support an argument. We reviewed statistics and testimony, the two most reliable ways of analyzing textual evidence. We reviewed anecdotal and analogical evidence, two useful but weaker methods of providing facts.
Separating fact from opinion can be a difficult task. In this video, we will discuss the distinction between fact and opinion and offer some helpful tips for distinguishing between the two. A fact is a statement that can be proven to be true by the use of evidence. Factual statements are true in all cases and for all people. In other words, facts are universal. Some examples include dogs are mammals. Albany is the capital of New York. Mount Everest is the tallest mountain on Earth. Each of these statements is true. Furthermore, each statement is verifiable and not debatable, provided that definitions are agreed upon. Put simply, evidence exists that could potentially prove or disprove each claim. Opinions, unlike facts, are neither true nor false. An opinion can express a belief, attitude, value, judgment, or feeling. Some examples include, dogs are the best mammals in existence. Albany is the most interesting city in New York. World War II was a terrible war. Each of these statements expresses an opinion. Note that each is debatable. In other words, one can potentially agree or disagree with. Debate, a statement of opinion. Note that the final statement, World War II was a terrible war, strikes many of us as factual. However, this is a statement of opinion. Yes, most people would consider World War II terrible. However, there is always the possibility that somebody out there holds a different opinion, as strange as they may seem. It is very rare for a statement with a value word like terrible to be factual. Now that we know the differences between a fact and an opinion, it's important to know how to distinguish between them when reading literature. Let's look at some helpful strategies. Watch for opinion masked as fact. A lot of times, professional or technical language can seem factual. In particular, you'll want to watch out for predictions. Predictions are opinions since they cannot be verified in the present. This is even true if the prediction is being expressed by an expert with an informed opinion. A zoologist who predicts that a particular animal will go extinct in 50 years, for example, is stating an informed opinion. This opinion is based on evidence, research, and expertise, but because it cannot be presently confirmed, it is not a fact. Value or judgment words often signal an opinion. LeBron James is very tall is a statement most people would agree with. However, the word very makes this problematic. What exactly does it mean to be very tall? It is not defined. What one person considers very tall, another may consider average or even short. The word very is an example of a value or judgment word. Here's a list of value and judgment words. If you see one of these in a statement, then the view being expressed is likely an opinion. Look for words like should or ought to. These words usually suggest a course of action or give advice. Though this advice may be advisable, it is rarely factual. No matter how much we agree with a should statement, it is by its very nature opinion. For instance, One should avoid smoking cigarettes. May be sound advice with a lot of supporting evidence, but it is still an opinion. Smoking cigarettes can cause a variety of health ailments, on the other hand, can be verified and is therefore factual. In essence, facts can be verified by evidence, and opinions are statements of belief, attitude, value, judgment, or feeling. Before we go, let's look at a quick review question. Which of the following statements is factual? A. Ohio is a beautiful state. B. You should never drive faster than the speed limit. C. George Washington was the first president of the United States. Or D. George Washington was a great public speaker. The answer is C. This is the only option that can be backed up by evidence.
Hi, and welcome to this video about predictive reading. Today, we'll explain what predictive reading is, the importance of predictive reading, and walk you through some easy examples that will give you better insight into this strategy. So, what is predictive reading? Predictive reading is exactly what it sounds like. Readers use their own experiences and understanding of what they're currently reading to predict what comes next. Let's break that down a little further. Readers use everything they read to help make their predictions. Everything means titles, pictures, written word, and diagrams. For example, let's say you're reading about the price of milk. You remember reading in the past that the price of milk has increased, but your current reading notes that it continues to cost more and more to produce a gallon of milk. You can reasonably predict that the price of milk will continue increasing. By carefully reading and analyzing content, the reader can predict what's about to happen. Why is predictive reading important? Predictive reading helps readers improve a number of skills they'll find useful in all walks of life. Let's take a look at some of them. Predictive reading helps with focus. To understand what you're reading, you have to focus on each word and piece of punctuation. You can't skim. You not only have to understand what you're reading, but connect current reading to what you've learned in the past. Predictive reading helps with that recall. You have to remember what you've previously read and use that information to help inform your predictions. Predictive reading helps you think ahead and anticipate. You've focused on the reading and you understand it. You've used recall to remember pieces of information. Now it's time to think ahead and anticipate what comes next. Comprehension and recall mean you have the tools to make a reasonable prediction and anticipate what happens next. Predictive reading also helps with revision strategies. Maybe your prediction wasn't correct. Using the milk example, let's say you predicted milk prices would drop, but they did in fact increase. You can review what you've read, reevaluate how you came to your conclusion, and revise it. Those are just a few of the benefits of predictive reading. Now, let's examine some of the clues you can look for when making reading predictions. There are a number of aspects of writing that provide clues to help you make reasonable reading predictions. For example, a book's title provides clues. You know Harry Potter books will be about Harry Potter just by reading the title, so that's an easy one. The book's cover art might also provide clues when the title doesn't. Let's take James Bradley, Flags of Our Fathers. At first glance, that title may not give a clue, but one look at the photo tells you what the book is about. It's the iconic photo of 6 men pushing an American flag up a hill in war, so you know it's about Iwo Jima in World War II. The table of contents can also provide clues based on the names of a chapter. Prologues can foreshadow information. Illustrations can provide clues based on what they show. So here's a predictive reading example and how you can use all of the information we've talked about to make a prediction. Here's the title of a book, When We Lost Our Innocence. The book cover contains one photo each of former President John F. Kennedy, civil rights icon Martin Luther King, and former U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. From looking at the clues in the title and the cover photo, what predictions could you make? There could be several. All three men were assassinated between 1963 and 1968. So you could predict the book will be about how the deaths of these leaders sent America into a spiral of chaos and despair. The 1960s was also a time when the country became ensnared in an unpopular Vietnam War and African Americans were fighting for their civil rights. You could predict the book examines how the deaths of these three men left a leadership void at a time the country needed it most. Now that you've formed a preliminary prediction, you start reading the book. You use recall to refer to information you've read, and if you see your prediction was incorrect, you revise it based on new knowledge. As you could probably guess, detective novels are one of the most famous methods of predictive reading. There's always a detective trying to solve a crime. There are clues throughout the book that can help you determine the identity of the bad guy. With these novels, you really have to focus because the bad guy is rarely the person you think it is. That's predictive reading, the process of taking information and predicting what's to come. The predicting part is always fun, but the ability to focus, recall information, think ahead, and revise are all valuable skills. You need help studying, so you came to Mometrics Academy. As a result, you learn more and succeed in your studies. Hello and welcome to this lesson on cause and effect. Cause and effect relationships are everywhere throughout stories. Cause is why something happened, and effect is what actually happened. There are usually subtle words or phrases that indicate whether something is the cause or effect in a sentence. The best way to learn this topic is to practice, and practice some examples. And while we're practicing, I'll highlight some of those key words. Tim fell asleep because he was tired. Cause, because he was tired. Effect, Tim fell asleep. Keywords, because. The word because is used to introduce a cause in a story. This sentence is probably written inverted from how you might usually see the word because used in a cause and effect example. You might also see the sentence written in this order. Because he was tired, Tim fell asleep. Let's check out a different example. Since I was thirsty, I drank a bottle of water. As a result, the bottle is empty. Cause. Since I was thirsty. Effect, I drank a bottle of water. Cause 2, I drank a bottle of water. Effect 2, as a result, the bottle is empty. Keywords. Since, as a result. In this example, there are two causes and two effects. There are also two key words. The word since is used to indicate a cause, just like the word because in the previous example. The first sentence follows the same sentence structure as our previous example once we inverted it. It begins with the key word and the cause follows after. The phrase as a result is used to indicate an effect in a sentence. This sentence also follows similar sentence structure. However, instead of introducing a cause in the sentence, it is introducing an effect. Here's a list of other keywords to be aware of when identifying causes and effects in stories. Cause. If, may be due to, because, and since. Effect. Then, consequently, as a result, for this reason, and so. When identifying cause and effect in the stories you're reading, just remember to slow down, examine the sentence, and look for key words. That's not to say that there will always be keywords to give it away. However, you can still find the cause and effect by asking what happened and why it happened. When you come upon a word you don't understand while reading, you have 3 options. You can choose to look it up in a dictionary, ignore it, or try to figure out what it means based on the context in which it's used. If you're in a test environment, you don't usually have the luxury of a dictionary, and it certainly isn't wise to ignore the word altogether. Therefore, it's a good skill to learn how a word's context can help you better understand what the word means. Searching for a word's context is as simple as looking at other words around the troublesome word. There are, in general, 5 main types of context clues: illustrations, synonyms, contrasts, inferences, and punctuation. The first context clues fall into the category of illustrations, examples or explanations of the word. This may seem overly simple, but difficult words are often followed by information the writer uses to explain the word's meaning. Look for words like such as, including, for instance, and like. This can be the author's way of further clarifying a difficult word, and you can sometimes make a logical guess about the word's meaning from the example alone. Take a look at this sentence. An occupation such as that of a hat maker or a postman is important for anyone who wants to earn a steady wage. In this sentence, we're looking at the word occupation. Not only is it a long word that we might not understand at first, but it also has multiple meanings. An occupation can mean a job, but it can also mean to take up space. It can even be used to talk about military invasion when one country is occupying another. When we look at the sentence, though, we see 2 examples given of the word in question. Neither a hat maker or a postman are particularly prone to occupying other countries, or at least that's not their primary purpose. So we can assume that the word occupation is referencing a job or employment opportunity. A second category of context clues is synonyms. A synonym is a word that shares a near meaning with another word. For example, loud and noisy mean similar things but are 2 different words. Take a look at the following sentence to see how synonyms can be good context clues. The patient's hippocampus was an uncharted minefield. His memory was so bad, the psychiatrist wondered whether that part of the brain was even processing memory and emotion the way it should. Hippocampus is a very confusing word in this sentence. Right away, the word brain tells us that the hippocampus is likely a part of the brain. In fact, it's the part of the brain thought to be responsible for memory and emotion. The sentence says the psychiatrist was concerned the patient's memory and emotion weren't being processed the way it should be. So we can deduce that the hippocampus is responsible for those processes. The clue had both synonyms, the word brain, and a full reinstatement of the initial sentence that clarified what the hippocampus was. A third helpful context clue is the contrast or antonym clue. Antonyms are the opposite of synonyms. For example, hot and cold are antonyms. Sometimes contrast sentences can tell us what a word is not, and that in turn can give us an idea of what the word is. Look at this. Mary was known for having smooth skin, but to her horror, she woke up on her wedding day with a papule on her nose. Do you know what a papule is? Neither did I, actually, but I can see the word but contrasting whatever it is with Mary's smooth skin. That, coupled with a clue about her nose, leads me to believe it is a zit of sorts, which in fact it is. A fourth clue to help you gain a bit of context surrounding words you don't understand is inference, or general context. This is a bit more vague of an explanation, but it basically means that sometimes we don't have clear synonyms or antonyms, and we don't have an illustration after the difficult word. Sometimes we just have to look at the paragraph as a whole and put a few floating parts together. This is best explained with an example. The haberdashery was Bob's favorite place. He bought all his suits there. The staff was friendly and always respectful. There's no direct description of what a haberdashery is, but the second sentence tells us that at the very least it sells suits. We also see that it's Bob's favorite place, so we can guess without certainty, but it's still a clue that it's a clothing place for men. The word staff couples with the word bought to let us know it's likely a store of some sort. The final helpful context clue is the clue of punctuation. Sometimes commas or quotation marks can be used to clarify the meaning of a word. Quotation marks can show the word has special meaning. Brackets can enclose additional explanation, and italics can further define a word. Think about the following. Matcha, Japanese green tea, has many health benefits. The parenthetical phrase gives a pretty clear description of what matcha is. In many ways, this kind of punctuation is the easiest context clue of all to deduce. These are the 5 main clues you can fall back on when trying to decipher the meaning of a difficult word. But in general, remember that when you come upon a word that isn't in your vocabulary, you don't have to give up. Paragraphs often hold together clues that can give you helpful hints about what the mystery word actually means. Have you ever heard someone say of their car, "She's a beauty," or refer to the winter wind as harsh or unkind? If you have, you've probably heard examples of personification, a useful literary device that adds color and meaning to your writing. Personification is a form of figurative language where the writer attributes human characteristics to something that's not human. It's easiest for humans to relate to things that are human or have human traits. By using human characteristics to describe an object, animal, place, or occurrence in your writing, you can help the reader better relate to your writing. Let's do 2 quick exercises to practice identifying personification in writing. First, let's look at a poem by Emily Dickinson, who is famous even today for her personification of nature. She writes, "Have you got a brook in your little heart where bashful flowers blow and blushing birds go down to drink and shadows tremble so?" Emily Dickinson is writing about a person's heart, the hidden thoughts and shy desires that not everyone is keen to share. She does this by comparing the heart to a landscape and using 3 examples of personification: bashful flowers, blushing birds, and trembling shadows. We know that flowers don't have emotions and therefore are incapable of being bashful, but this imagery helps us imagine the drooping flowers and feel some kinship with them. The same goes for the blushing birds and trembling shadows. Personification is common in literature, but let's look at it in these famous lines from advertising to make sure we can quickly recognize it in our everyday life. How about the Oreo cookie slogan? Oreo, milk's favorite cookie, or perhaps the slogan from Kleenex facial tissues. Kleenex says, "Bless you." Does milk have a mind or personality? Is it possible for milk to literally have a favorite? Not at all, but personification helps the customer feel closer to the product, just as we know Kleenex doesn't possess the mind or ability to literally bless someone. But we can still feel comforted by this inanimate object because of the advertiser's clever use of personification. So, when should you use personification in your own writing? It's the most appropriate in descriptive or narrative writing. As you saw in the earlier example, personification is often employed in poetry, as well as creative fiction. It's rare to use personification in an essay or report, although a well-crafted example could help grab the reader's attention. It's important to remember that personification isn't just a way to be creative in your writing. It can add humor, point out truth, and invite the reader to deeper emotion. When John Milton wrote, "Earth felt the wound, and nature from her seat, sighing through all her works, gave signs of woe," he was not just describing Earth in a creative way. He was inviting you as a reader to think about the planet as a living thing, to understand what he was describing as the fall of man in the context of human physical suffering. It gives a reader pause. One last thing before we go. Sometimes personification is mixed up with another long word in literary analysis, anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism is an extreme kind of personification in which animals or objects are described as if they were really people talking, walking upright, and thinking critically. This is stronger than simple personification, which could describe something with human terms without implying it had a consciousness. For example, if you read, "The wolf accused the moon with his lonely howl," you might feel sympathy for the wolf, but you would hardly jump to the assumption that the wolf had human thoughts. Anthropomorphism, on the other hand, is something like Winnie the Pooh or the Geico gecko. Here we see non-human animals and objects that literally walk and talk like humans. It's stronger than the personification and less subtle. I hope that this video is helpful. See you guys next time.